I'm 55 years old and now I avoid people. Many times throughout my career, I've enjoyed those moments, those times dealing with people, managing people, working with people. And a lot of my career has been based around working with others. As a lot of you, we often find ourselves excited to get to work on Monday morning just to chat about our news with some of our coworkers. And so a lot of times our network or people around us at work or otherwise seem to be those people that we get excited to talk to the most. But after years, their priorities start shifting. Things start to change. We start to find compromises in our lifestyle where a lot of times our work and people quite often take up a lot more time. Maybe people that aren't necessarily as meaningful to us as a lot of our personal family. Maybe, our young ones, maybe our spouse. We know those are the people we really cherish. And yet, sometimes we find ourselves spending way more time with people that take up our time and quite often eat it up in a way that just feels like they're eating it up and spitting it out. But as they say, like all things in life are free, all good things in life are free. Not necessarily my time, because time's not free. And I don't like wasting any of my time. And I don't think any of you do either, because we know that time we can't get back. It's a valuable commodity. And while I can make more money, I certainly can't get more time back. But there's times in my life where I've felt that I spend way too much of it, just supporting other people, helping others, listening to other people that really never bothered looking or listening back or supporting me. But we find quite often that we spend a lot of our time with those that don't always give back or don't support us or don't pump us up. And there are a group of reasons why, in fact, that I find it's just not worth spending time with people. And while those close to us we love spending time with, there are many others that we simply don't. And I'm learning that, and I've certainly figured this out, and I'm learning this as I go. Certainly once I hit my 50s, it's really becoming much more clear. Our mortality is staring us down the barrel, and we just know that our days are numbered. And of course, every single day is more and more important. So we want to make sure that we're doing it for all the right reasons, that everything that we're doing is adding value, not taking value away, because we don't have forever. And we're watching the grains of sand fall through the hourglass. But, without getting into cliches, as they say, too much of a good thing can sometimes be not so good. In my last stretch of work, I had anywhere from about 15 up to about 30 workers that were certainly part of my team, and we worked cohesively together. But, as anything, if you're the leader of a team, quite often you're making big decisions. You're sometimes making decisions on the spot. Sometimes you're making decisions, of course, that are going to be very, very challenging and quite often needs a lot of time and thought. Some decisions, some answers come like that, knee jerk. They're easy. And others, you've got to go away and think about this for a while. Well, when you're doing that, you're actually spending time, which is ultimately what you do at your job. You're spending time thinking about your next move, thinking about some of those decisions. Actually take time of your day. Unfortunately, a lot of those leadership roles still have a daytime job, whether it's, other types of more technical roles aren't necessarily designed directly towards, your leadership. Each and every job has a core foundation of job roles. And, quite often you find yourself spent in a day just consuming those hours trying to make decisions or, come up with solutions that a lot of your, counterparts and your peers are looking for. But in the meantime, a lot of your standard work, your core work, quite often gets pushed back, and you find yourself now, just spending a lot of time outside of working hours. Now trying to answer some of those questions. Now trying to complete some of those tasks that you should have been doing during your working hours, but you weren't able to manage to get that done simply because you were making decisions and supporting the rest of your team. And we know that that's what you signed up for, and quite often we enjoyed it. In those moments, we really, really enjoy spending time, having those answers, having the solutions, being the boss. We all have bosses. I was a boss, somebody else was a boss of me, they had a boss, and the food chain goes up, up, up. But in doing so, we all have decisions and we all have compromises to our day, and really it's about time management. But as we realize, time is very limited. And so as this time goes on, I found ways that just spending it in a more effective way with people now that are more meaningful just adds so much more value. Because now, after doing years in that type of a role, spending time around people, there's a lot of different traits that people bring to the table that clearly are red flags for me. And I want to talk about some of those, because one of the red flags are people that are disingenuous, okay? People that blow smoke up where smoke don't go, okay? And the reason I say that, I go back many years ago. I had this gentleman, he was actually one of my bosses. And, he was a real workaholic, work. That was kind of his game. And he just loved working, and that was just his thing. And he was a good guy fundamentally. He was extremely technical, extremely smart, and he always had the right answers. He was the go-to, and he actually happened to be one of the business owners, or the company owners of the organization I worked for many years ago. But the problem, unfortunately, with that gentleman was that he just had so much going on in his mind. He would come out and ask me a question. He'd say, "Mark, how was your vacation?" And of course, naturally, my response was, "Well, it was great. We had a great time. We started doing this, we started doing that." I was literally 5 seconds into my conversation, and his mind's off gazing at something else. He's thinking that he's somewhere else. His mind's already gone. So he's coming to me asking the question, asking, how my holiday was, and asking how the family was, and asking, how I'm feeling. And he's asking the right questions, but it's almost more damaging to a relationship when you ask questions almost as though you have a checkbox, a series of questions that have to be answered or asked for the sake of trying to show that you have good leadership skills, when in the meantime, he asks those questions, he checks the boxes, but then he's clearly spaced right out, and there's no response, and this response looks more of agitation and, okay, hurry up now. And you can almost read, between those eyes what he's actually thinking, and it's almost of, hurry up, get moving. I don't have all day to listen to you gas on about your holidays. So that's almost how it feels. And dealing with disingenuous people who aren't genuine, people who aren't authentic, people who just sort of, say things, blow smoke, and really aren't meaningful. People like that I can spot from a mile away now. When you find them throwing an overabundance of compliments, or really trying to pump you up, or doing it in a way that seems very public related, they're like, "Hey, yeah, you're the best golfer I've ever seen," in a very disingenuous way. And it's clear that whatever they're coming from, their world isn't necessarily one that you want to be part of. So as I start to, navigate my way through life, and certainly later on in my years, not just in my last company, but certainly anywhere in my life, I started seeing that people that weren't genuine, they weren't authentic. And if there's one thing that I've realized, those are the people I want to put in the rearview mirror. I don't want those people around. I don't need those people. And quite frankly, save your breath, save those fake compliments, and just go find something else to do and somebody else to bother. Because people like that are disingenuous, that just don't care, have no place in my life. And, I just find good quality people are much fewer and far between. I want to extend another one where they basically talk about, some doors open, some doors close. That's a sort of a conversation piece, and talking about barriers, right? Putting up those walls, those barriers. So as we do that, these walls and these barriers that we discuss and talk about become more prevalent as we age. We start putting up more walls, we start closing some more doors, but those few doors that we do open are for people that we actually care about. Now, I want to share this little tidbit because my eldest daughter, absolutely gorgeous young lady, she's just got, essentially getting married, okay? We did a little party on the weekend for her and her fiance. They're absolutely amazing people. The family's amazing, and I have nothing but great things to say. What I will say is, at that party, I found having conversations, having discussions with everybody there, because we put together a group. There was about 50 of us there almost. And having those discussions, many of which were people that we hadn't seen for a while, some of which were really quality people, and we've known them from years ago. We used to travel with them for, many years ago. We used to do these big trips to California, and you kind of name it, you do these big road trips because they're quality people. Well, we hadn't seen them for a while. Their life was busy, our life was busy. But opening the doors to quality people, having those conversations and chatting with those folks, that couple pretty much almost consumed the entirety of that party. Why? Because you start recognizing those couple of doors that are open. You want to make sure that quality people are welcomed in, and close the doors on those people that you really know aren't necessarily in your best interest. So it's all about those barriers, creating more barriers, but just opening a few small doors. More people that I find myself avoiding and just ignoring and leaving in the rearview mirror are people. I sort of spoke on it yesterday's video, and I kind of got to the foundation of it yesterday, but really it's those people that are one-sided, okay? They're always there just for their own personal needs, their own personal wins. And when you realize it's all about them, and for years you sort of let this go on. This goes on and on and on and on, where, every time you meet up, they have 100,000 things to talk about and share, and they don't even open their trap and ask you one question. You might find yourself, going through this list of questions with them. How you doing? How's your job doing these days? How's the car keeping up? How you feeling? What's going on? What's your plans for the future? When's your date for retirement? You get into these questions and ask these folks these questions, but it's a constant, you go through your list, they go on and on, but there's no rebuttal. And quite often there is those people out there that just don't return that. And not that you necessarily need that, but it is nice to know that maybe, that somebody kind of cares, that somebody maybe is curious about how you're doing, or something's going on in your life. And, the people that that kind of care are the ones that here, obviously reach out to you just for no random reason. They reach out just because. They say, hey, hey, Mark, what's going on? Haven't talked to you for a bit. What's new? And then the conversation's really more about catching up, that they reach out. That conversation isn't led out by, hey, do you got $200 you can lend me? Or, some other financial or, some other obligation you can offer up to them. Rather, it's more of just a question about how you doing, how you feeling. Maybe you hear through the grapevine or social media or through a group of friends that maybe you haven't been feeling well or what have you. And then they reach out and they say, I heard things weren't, necessarily the best. How you feeling there, Mark? What's going on? And so when people are reaching out randomly, speaking of something that isn't related directly to them gaining a benefit of some sort, it's pretty clear that they have your best interest in heart. Now, it's mutual, and when you have good friends and those people in your life that are meaningful, it's usually reciprocal. They'll ask you, there's a curiosity about how you're doing. You're going to likely at some level, you're going to be the same way with them. And it's just the way a lot of us just respond. We just know when they're good people, when they're actually those folks that are meaningful to us or we're meaningful to them. It's not like a workshop. It's not like something that you're forced to do. You just realize that, and I've realized for years, that when you have somebody like that just reaches out to you just to see what's going on, not for rumors, not like, have you heard what John did lately? It's not about that. It's about how you doing, what's new, what's going on, where you at these days. It's just more of that. And I could speak back to my previous organization. I have literally one person that has stayed in touch in a way that comes from that space, that comes from a place of, how you doing? What's going on? What's new? We should get together for a coffee. And it's not about gaining clout. It's not about gaining reputation. It's not about gaining monetary means. It's literally about just chatting. And because quite often I can honestly say looking back, that individual and I had hours and hours of fun times, windshield chat, good talks. We worked together for quite a while and then we didn't. But at the end of the day, absolute top shelf person. We had so much in common. And I feel that it's more than just you choose to have somebody in your life. I feel there's sort of a connection There's almost like a spiritual connection to somebody that just resonates on your wavelength, right? You just know it, right? You start talking, he starts going on about some old country music song, and he's talking about Freddie Fender and wasted days and wasted nights. He starts singing that song, and it just got me howling, because I said, you know what, my dad used to listen to that song. I said, that's one of the greats. And so we used to talk about, some of those things, and it started out like that. It started out with those conversations where we found that common factor, that common denominator, that common point of discussion. And once we found that link, we just started linking many other things and really started to realize that, we have a lot more in common. And so as time goes on, you just find commonalities, you agree on most things, and those few that you don't, you talk through it. But ultimately, when you know that quality person in your life, you tend to keep them a little closer, and you stay in touch, and you care what they think, and they care about what you think, and it matters. And the rest of the people, well, they have their little priorities and things in their life, but realistically, most of that just doesn't matter at the end of the day, because a lot of people that don't have your best interests, a lot of people that don't care about you, or vice versa, are just consuming time which we don't have a lot of. And again, like they say, if you're 50, say 55, like I am, you think, okay, my mother passed at 79. That gives me, a couple dozen years left. I think even Hulk Hogan passed at 76. Sadly, now we also hear, or Hulk Hogan passed at 71, and Ozzy passed at 76. And we start thinking about factors like that, and people that we grew up that were cultural icons and now are leaving us, and we think it's 71. I'm 55. That's what, 16 years? It really starts to hit you about how you don't want to waste your time, how you want to make sure that you're going to spend it with quality people that actually matter, and not people that are wasting your time. Another thing, now that I'm 55 and all that hustle and all that bustle at my workspace, and I kind of expressed how things were constantly drawing on my time, that almost was too much of a good thing, as you say. I really enjoyed my work for many years as a leader. It's nice to have a team, and you collaborate, and it's busy, and sometimes it's all that energy and all that chaos that turns around, and you convert it into sort of a planned chaos and turn it into something that's safe, well-manufactured plan, go forward and be successful. And it just feels good when you create something, a plan, and execute on positive terms. And so it pumps you up. You get fired up in your job sometimes, and that energy was uplifting for many years, until politics get in the way, and noise, and people that were disingenuous, and other people that are undermining and slicing and dicing, and managers that don't have a clue what you do, and yet they're rating you on some kind of performance scale that just doesn't seem to align with what you've done from the previous year. So all of that just starts to really put a thorn in your craw. So what you start to realize is, I have all these things that are taking my time, consuming my time, eating my time. Yes, work is time for money, but you still sometimes can't separate that, because let me share something. In my previous role, we would go on call, and even as the leader, you'd quite often be on call. So you'd have to take a phone call, on a weekend, or you'd actually be technically on call, and you could get a call any time of the day or night. Now, usually in certain roles, you wouldn't necessarily have to go to a site to fix a problem, but you would have to answer a call, and quite often it was some big decisions. Quite often there was logistics you had to organize, and sure, you could do it from your living room. But there was time and time and time and time again where I'd get a call at, Thursday evening at, 2 a.m, or a Saturday morning at, 3 a.m, or, a Sunday night at, 11 p.m. And it was always weird hours, because you usually had coverage, everywhere from the daytime hours. Typically, you would have coverage around 5:30 or, 5:36 in the morning, all the way up to about 5:36 p.m. And then after that, outside the regular hours, that's when the on-call had to kick in. Now, at first it was fine, being on call, there was a slight compensation for that. But what you start to realize is all those calls that drag you out of bed at 2 a.m. or 11 o'clock, quite often took you away from sleeping, relaxing, sometimes family. Sometimes you get those calls in the afternoon and you're out there with the family. Next thing you know, they're having dinner over there and you're just sitting there, had to step outside and take an hour-long phone call, because now you get the call, then you have to make other calls, you have to do some reporting, then you have to call some logistics, some contracts, you have to just start organizing, and you're doing this while your family's over there having dinner. And so it's all of this noise and this chaos. Quite often, after a while, initially it's fun, initially it's fine, and initially you realize it's part of the role. But there's not one person, and anybody from my previous company watching this video can attest, if you're on call, it easily chews up and compromises your personal life. Easily. And it did. Again, I enjoyed it for many years, but it started to get a bit much. And so now you have all these pulls on your time in the middle of the night, in the middle of the afternoons, and all of this time eating took you away from the real priorities of spending time, birthdays for the young ones, going to somebody's anniversary party, got pulled away, sometimes having to go work out of town, sometimes not being away, or being away from the family. And these pulling of priorities meant that you didn't live the life you wanted to live. Yes, we share time for money, but as you look back retrospectively, how much time did I actually give away when I should have been there for the family, when I should have been there for somebody who needed my help, when I should have been there for that friend that actually needed some support that day, and I shrugged them off and said, "Can I call you later?" I should have been there. And just think of those words in your mind. I should have been there. And as we go through our lives, and I think about these scenarios and these different circumstances where I should have been there, it just constantly tears and tugs away even more and more and more every single time. And so now you have a situation where you almost start to carry a chip on your shoulder. You start to feel a little bit cranky and angry, and then you start to resent everything, and you start to develop this grumpy old man syndrome. And I don't like that. Nobody wants that. And then you start taking it home. And then the family members start wondering, why is he grumpy? They think every time he comes home, he's grumpy. It actually starts to turn into a depressive state. Because what I found was going through a lot of this, where I was working out of town extensively, or even having to get pulled away because of a lot of big decisions, having to go back into work, and then getting critiqued for it because I didn't stick around for the duration, was clear signs you didn't have quality people sometimes around you. And sometimes they didn't have your best interests in heart. So you do compromise your time. You're taking one for the team on a regular basis, but unfortunately, you just have to keep rolling with the punches. But over time, this starts to really bear down. It starts to play and wreak havoc with mental health, with those issues. And you're now finding yourself torn between, being with your family or the trading time for money thing that your job actually requires you to do. And now you're sort of building up this pent up, I don't want to say anger, but certainly it's very disappointing from time to time to time. And well, there were some people that actually are fine with it, and some people just seem to relish in that. I've also seen many, many job sites where it's full of older gentlemen that in their 60s that are divorced and decide to go up north and work in the tar sands in northern Alberta because they no longer have a family life. See, I didn't want to be that. And now instead, what I'm finding myself is spending a lot more time with the people that I want to spend it with. Like last weekend, for example, I stepped away. Normally I would spend some time doing social media, prepping for the next week, but I said enough. I basically cut off my other channel. I just stopped producing any content. I didn't film. I didn't do any kind of social media on the weekend because we said, no, let's go. We're going away for a weekend. And that's the difference now. I'm able to manage my time in a way that helps me get through life, but also spend it now with the people I want to spend it with. And now the idea of having people around, the quality people is good, but the people that aren't supporting, my life in any way, I don't really need them around. And there are those that, of course, draw from your time. And I will add to this because there's always a caveat. And I've had people in my life where they've always supported and they've been really helpful and supportive in many ways, doing maybe physical labor work that they're familiar with. It's a skill or a trade that they have. They come and help me, and I have absolutely no point or no issue in going to help them. They need a hand, I'm the first one to hustle over there, because it's a mutual thing. It's a mutual respect. We support each other on many different fronts that way, and it's just, we don't even have to discuss it. It's not about +1, -1. It's about, you help me, I'm helping you, and I can really respect the person that you are and the integrity that you carry. You know, a time now as we get older is a realization that there's just people that want to take your time, your job, people, events that are going to consume your time. And that will always be a thing. But I find myself now as I get a little older, why would I want to waste my time with people that really aren't additive? Rather, they're subtractive, bringing me down. I'd rather be brought up. And I don't mean like pump me up. I don't need people to pump my tires. I just want to get into a conversation to the next point here of being around people that are largely positive, being around people that aren't necessarily going to bring me down or that negative energy. So it's all about that energy control too. See, that's another element of why I push people out of my little sphere of influence, because there's some people that are very positive. And like I said, at the anniversary party, there's a few people there that were extremely positive. And those are the people I want in my life. And I make it pretty clear. I don't say it, but by my body language and time spent, it becomes pretty evident and pretty obvious that those are the people I value and I cherish. And those are the people I spend my time with. But with that said, there's also a growing number of people that don't have, you know, the best interest, and a bunch of people too that you'll find. Do you ever get together in a group conversation and you find that you come out of there and you just feel exhausted? I've had numerous people in my lives throughout the years. You come out of a chat and you just feel weak and broken down and exhausted. Talking to that person is just exhausting. Whether they're going on about some politics, or going on about all kinds of, you know, things in social culture and things that just don't really matter at this point. They're going on and on and on, and they're negative, and their energy is just so just all-consuming. These people quite often just sap the energy out of me. And while I can appreciate everybody in your life makes an impact, both good and bad, and I do believe we're a product of our environment. So all of these people, whether you keep them around or whether you don't, all teach us a lesson of some sort, whether it's good or bad or indifferent or however it looks. I do see everybody as having, you know, something that they can give you that you can take from, and you can learn from that and build and make yourself better, understanding how you should live your life or not live your life. So everybody does deliver something. Everybody does offer up that teaching moment, but not everybody should spend time in your life. And quite honestly, it's a heartbreaking scenario as we get older and we find ourselves giving our time up to too many other priorities that don't seem to become one of our priorities, as in spending time with your family. And, you know, those are the priorities. Those are the things that matter. And what I'm realizing later in life is focusing more on the things that matter. My priorities, my young ones, my wife, those matter to me. And a couple of good friends, and, you know, that's it. That's all that matters. And that's why more and more people getting pushed outwards rather than inwards. Like I said, put up those barriers, those walls, you're going to find that there's a lot more doors closing and a lot more walls getting built up, but there's still a couple of those critical doors that are open just for those people that I really want in. And again, as always, you want to hear the famous words my dad said, his last words before he passed. You're going to want to see that video, one of my popular ones. Hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.